Trev, you did a mock draft.
I did.
I am sure it's the worst mock draft ever because all of them are. But how is this shaping up now? Chicago with the number 1 and number 2 overall pick. I'm going to assume they're not sticking with Justin Fields at this point.
No, they absolutely aren't. And Brad Spielberger just posted an article on Twitter that he wrote 3,000 words on how to fix the Bears franchise. I haven't read it yet, so I can't wait to dive into that here after this show. But here in this mock draft, if they're picking number 1, it's so obvious. They're not going to trade the number 1 pick again. They're going to be moving on from Justin Fields. And let's be honest, if they're picking number 1 overall, everyone is probably gone. The entire coaching staff is probably gone. And the only one who might survive it is Ryan Poles. Mm-hmm. I don't think at this point, even if they're picking number 1 overall, that Poles would be gone. But man, there have been some transactions, it feels like, that have not looked pretty on guys that Poles have brought in. It's highlighted, obviously, by what's going on with Chase Claypool right now. And so, believing in Justin Fields over the quarterback class when C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson in particular look very, very good. That's a tough pill to swallow. The Chase Claypool trade's obviously a tough pill to swallow. You get DJ Moore saying to the Buccaneers when they play the team, like, oh, they're not using you right. Yeah, you're telling me. It's like, all right, that's not great.
Yeah.
The defensive line can't get after the quarterback, and I know that's kind of a work in progress there, but you spend a ton of money on 2 linebackers, and it's like, man, it's if they pick number 1 overall, there will be a case to move on from Ryan Poles, even though I don't think that it would happen, and probably would tell you it's a little bit too early. Not every GM is perfect. He's figuring it out. So all that to say, pick 1 and 2. I ended up going with 2 offensive players. Caleb Williams goes number 1 overall. That was the easy one. Mm-hmm. Number 2, I don't want to say is tougher of a selection. This is the one that they got from the Panthers, which, yikes. But it's either, to me, this one comes down to you're either taking Marvin Harrison Jr. and you're pairing Caleb Williams with an elite wide receiver the second he steps on into the NFL. So you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got DJ Moore. Or you go with an offensive tackle. And it's a really good offensive tackle class. So a guy like Joe Alt from Notre Dame, a guy like Penn State's Olu Fashanu, who could have been a top 10 pick at offensive tackle last year. Maybe you'd rather go with an offensive line pick to say, hey, we're supporting Caleb Williams by making sure that he's not going to die back there. So that's kind of my back and forth of I landed on Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., but you really could go with wide receiver or offensive tackle, I think, for that next pick to help set him up.
Yeah, it's the next version of the Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase debate, except you took the quarterback 1 pick ahead of them. It's like which guy is going to be the option. The one argument I think that would make you, I don't have a horse in this race. I could be convinced in either direction. But one argument that might make you go for the offensive tackle is just how deep the wide receiver class is every year at this point. Mm-hmm. And you can get, their next pick will be the top of the 2nd round. And instead of Chase Claypool, you can actually get somebody that can contribute and maybe be an impact player at the top of the 2nd in wide receiver terms, whereas you're probably not getting that guy on the offensive line at the top of the 2nd, or there's a much steeper drop-off at that point. So Marvin Harrison may well be generational, and we talked about him before, but you look at any of the last few draft classes, you're going to be able to find a wide receiver in the 2nd round that comes in and makes a big impact as well. And if you can get that guy in addition to Caleb Williams, in addition to the top offensive tackle on the board, now that's a haul that I would get behind.
Yeah. We had this conversation on NFL Stock Exchange. We did a mock draft as well, even independent from the one that I did. Myself and Connor Rogers, we went back and forth just doing a new mock. He ended up going with Olu Fashanu at 2, and that was the conversation that we had is Olu looks very, very good in terms of a pass protecting offensive tackle. I mean, the dude moves super well. He's so fluid. He's so dominant at pass blocking already, even as a college player. Needs to get stronger, needs to be a little bit more of a force in the run game, but I think that's something that could definitely be taught. It's a lot tougher to teach those pass blocking tools. So a player like that, even for as special as Marvin Harrison Jr. is, the capitalistic supply and demand of how many of these types of guys are going to be available would probably lend itself towards you taking the offensive line pick and then having Olu as your left tackle and Darnell Wright as your right tackle for the foreseeable future.
So those are the only two lack of win teams. What the hell is
unwinded
unvictoried teams in the NFL. The only teams that have yet to record any kind of victory, and Chicago owns the draft pick for both of them.